Anna, thanks for making the time to talk with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I would like to know, to begin with, when did you first know medicine was for you? What is that? When was that moment where you said, ooh, that's what I want to do with my life?
I had a really excellent 7th grade biology teacher, and I was so lit up by knowing about biology and about plants and frogs and just life in general that I decided that I wanted to make that like a path of inquiry. So it initially came from a curiosity around how life works and how the body functions. And then as I began to learn more and develop more of a sense of who I was and what it means to be of service, I just fell completely in love with the art and the practice of medicine.
So there must have been some moment where you realized, okay, I can be a biologist, maybe spend my time in the field, or I can help people. What made the difference? What swayed you toward being of service to people?
So I'm reflecting on that. It's taking me back to high school and starting with this fascination with biology in general, which was in 7th grade, and then moving into human anatomy and physiology. And then as a pre-med, deciding to go the pre-med route and check it out in college. That's where, with volunteering in an emergency room and in the hospital and in a clinic and also being out in the world more and learning more about the human condition and experience and all of the poignancy of that it morphed from this fascination with human anatomy and physiology really into what it is to be a human being, and in all of its richness and complexity, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a mother, what it is to end up in the emergency room in a crisis, and how we as human beings can respond to that, as well as just a total unquenchable curiosity about the way the body works. And so this marriage of inquiry and intellectual rigor and commitment to lifelong learning with love of humanity is somewhere in college where it really became clear, like, yes, this is it. Mm-hmm.
Well, that begs the question, because you speak very passionately about the idea that we're in trouble, that it's not all, when you strike out on a career in medicine, I'm sure it's all idealistic and you're going to help people and really make a difference and save the world. You speak now with a little more realism about that we're in trouble with our approach to medicine and health and wholeness. When did you realize that? You invested all these years and all this time and effort in becoming a physician. When did you realize, wait, we've got a problem to solve?
So in medical school, I was fortunate to have done medical school at a time in life where I didn't have children, and I was able to really pour myself into the rigor and the intellectual stimulation and the learning, and then that transitions into residency where you know that you're going to be working incredible hours and just diving into this immersive experience of learning, and I loved those experiences, and then it was really, I think, well, through those experiences in the hospital in San Francisco General where I did my residency, seeing that there is much that we can do in medicine, and there is much that is upstream from that which we are engaging with in the clinical, in the hospital, in the clinic.
Things like what do you mean by upstream?
Like poverty, like access to healing food, like clean air, clean water, like living in a way that's not so stressful that our human beings just can barely cope. So all of those socioeconomic or cultural structures in which we live our lives inform much more about our health, really, than what the doctor says or does or counsels or prescribes for you in a clinical encounter. And so that became very real to me while in residency in family medicine at San Francisco General Hospital. And then going out into practice, working at a community health center and being responsible for guiding people toward healthy lifestyle choices and behaviors and guiding them through whatever health crisis was happening. Again and again, if only there were more time or a different setting or a way to engage with meaning and with the depth of what it is to be a whole, healthy human being, the 20-minute office visit really is inadequate. And I had the great fortune to do a fellowship in integrative medicine between residency and practicing out in the community. It was concurrent to the other thing that was between that was working within the California Department of Corrections. Actually, I worked in the prison system as a consultant from UCSF, which was a very beautiful and heart-wrenching and eye-opening experience unto itself.
Okay, so let's pause there. You just tossed that out into the flow,
I did.
But I'm very interested to know what things you gleaned. How did that change you to be in such close contact with that population of people?
I think so. I was working at a time where the healthcare in the California Department of Corrections in the prison system in California was found to be unconstitutionally inadequate. Basically, there were people who weren't really equipped to be serving as physicians for this population, either because they weren't board certified or appropriately trained, or perhaps they were anesthesiologists who had lost their license and were practicing general primary care, or actually there was a veterinarian. So, really, and people were dying needlessly from asthma attacks, for example, and just people weren't getting the care that they needed. And so for me, it was a beautiful opportunity to be working with human beings under the most challenging of experiences and to remain open to meeting someone on a human level, even though there are so many layers of experience and challenge. And I had the fortune to be working with a population of women who were incarcerated at a particular institution. And for me, one of the things I was deeply curious about and moved by to quite a poignant extent was the circumstances that surround people's incarceration and what life experiences often inform how people get into that situation.
And so what do you mean? Give an example of
poverty, trauma, addiction, self-medication, to just cope with the tremendous pain and anguish, becoming involved with people who didn't have their best interests at heart, or perhaps were addicted or otherwise challenged in their own way, and then often a spiral of violence, often from a place of self-preservation. Few sociopathic women, but people who are a victim of circumstance, really. And you can quickly imagine that there, but for some wondrous grace, could go I, And so, and for me, it was while I was working in the prison that I had this great gift of an opportunity to be a Brave Well Fellow in Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona's Fellowship in Integrative Medicine, which was Andrew Weil's program. And part of the gift came this great responsibility to carry integrative medicine out into the world and to work for change within healing. And so while I was beginning this fellowship and still working in the prison system, and then also starting to work with the community within West Marin, where I was starting to do some fill-in work and feeling back into, I really need to be practicing in primary care. And but I had these opportunities to do, and it was like my volunteer service project that I was able to do in the gymnasium at this prison, where we would do these mind, body, spirit jams and bring these women together and sit in a circle and just start with a grounding meditation and then some stretching, and then I would bring in a dance mix. I love creating dance mixes.
Oh, I'm really visualizing this.
It was so beautiful.
Love to see video of that.
It was so beautiful. There was no video made, and we did a few of them, and it was so moving to be in a space with women who were experiencing, for me, almost unimaginable pain and separation and alienation from community and from the natural world. And still, to be able to experience joy and delight and playfulness and spontaneous soul train lines arising and just like really dancing and seeing each other as human beings with the capacity to experience joy and connection and love even. And it was such a beautiful experience, and I miss working in the prisons very much.
Well, backtrack just a moment for me, because some people listening might not understand exactly what the term integrative medicine means. What is that?
So it's a term that speaks to the both and quality of complete healing art, that we have the incredible science and heroic measures that we have possible with allopathic Western medicine. So we have medicine, the pharmaceuticals, pills. We have procedures. We have this way of understanding this theoretical framework and concept of how the body works and how we can intervene and fix things and guide people really back toward wellness. But it's not the only way. There are other systems that have been around for thousands of years, like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, ways of engaging with the energy body, ways of engaging with mind and body, that interface, ways of engaging with nature, with herbal medicine, with homeopathy, all of these different ways of engaging the healing, that healing force. And there's also, and that we can use both appropriately and to discern when it's the moment is right to be recommending acupuncture or massage or forest bathing or a little tune-up of one's diet, which is so central to health and well-being, and when it is that a pill is needed. One of the challenges with the framing of allopathic medicine is that there's not enough attention to supporting our own natural inherent capacity to heal. That we have this incredible strength within, just as the trees, just as the deer, just as other natural beings as we are, have to self-regulate, to bring oneself back into balance. We just need to remember how to nourish our beings. And yes, of course, things arise, and even people who are eating optimally and getting enough sleep and minding their stress, disease happens and illness happens, and so it's not to say that there's not a place for allopathic medicine, but I think that to go there first robs someone, first of all, of developing a relationship with their self and their life and their path, and having symptoms or illness reflect for them where perhaps something is out of balance and what needs to be restored back into balance. And if we are too quick to rush to prescribing something because perhaps we only have 20 minutes with someone and we desperately want to help them, and we know that we could prescribe something for them and that will be the quickest thing, but that really does miss an opportunity to help encourage someone back toward a healthy balance and relationship. And further, there is a real risk that comes with you overutilizing pharmaceuticals. It is actually, even something like ibuprofen has a lot of risk involved.
Well, it seems a dramatic understatement to put it like that. Oh, there's a risk of overprescription. We're in the middle of a huge opioid crisis that, in large part, came into being because of prescription medicine. You, in your presentation just earlier today, you said that you thought that, in fact, the 20-minute visit could be considered a dangerous thing. I was intrigued by that. Would you explain why you would use a word like dangerous?
Absolutely. So we could use the experience of pain and suffering that many people have, and is one of the more common reasons that people come and engage the care of a primary care doctor or an urgent care doctor or an emergency medicine doctor, because they're experiencing great pain. And when we are moving quickly from room to room to room, if we are seeing on average, in my primary care practice, I feel very fortunate that in this community health center at which I work, it's a safety net clinic, I see between 16 and 18 patients a day. And that's a lot. It feels like it's too many, but it's not 24 or 26.
Which some are.
And when you are holding this sacred responsibility of understanding how a complex being like a human who has all sorts of things going on that come to bear on health, be it family dynamics, what's going on in the community, how they're able to access food or not, how they're living their lives, who's supporting them, why they're not sleeping, all of these things.
Yeah, grief, loss, financial insecurity, name it.
The full catastrophe, as John Kabat-Zinn would say. There's so much that we're navigating that impact whether or not disease happens or whether we'll heal from something, or to the degree to which we experience pain. And the pharmaceutical industry has been very, how do I say it, there are a lot of vested interests that also come to bear within the practice of medicine. And the opioid crisis is a manifestation of vested interests having too strong of a voice. And that is a large reason why physicians such as myself, who were trained, went through medical school right on the heels of Purdue Pharma developing oxycodone, OxyContin, that as we were coming through medical school and into residency, a lot of medical boards and specialty boards and pain management specialties were heavily informed and biased by pharmaceutical reps and the industry. And we were told again and again that we're undertreating pain and we're not meeting patients' needs, and we have a pill for this, and there's no risk of harm. If people are experiencing real pain, they won't become addicted. And people who go into medicine, as you pointed out earlier, we're very idealistic and service-oriented, and we want very much to help.
True. You do not want to leave somebody in pain if you can help it.
Don't want to leave someone in pain. And there are many ways to help people through the experience of pain. And sometimes opioids are appropriate, but it's not that common, actually.
Well, and would you say the whole idea of integrative medicine is that there are different kinds of pain? Emotional pain, psychological pain.
Absolutely.
The pain of living in poverty, as you've suggested.
Absolutely. Isolation, alienation. And there are many inflammatory conditions as well, many behavioral choices that can actually augment pain signals or dampen them. So there are a lot of tools that, if we were better prepared in our medical training to consider the whole spectrum of treatments that we could offer someone, and the real risk associated with prescribing a pain medication, or even an acid blocking medication, or ibuprofen. So many of these medications that we use fairly routinely have major downstream impacts, and it's because it throws our beautiful, elegant, delicate ecosystems out of balance. And so, to your question about why the danger, what's the risk of going so quickly? And the risk is that we've been trained to use these heroic measures, and if we overuse them, we're just throwing pills at symptoms that are downstream manifestation of upstream causes that we don't have the time to address, or maybe even the right structure to be holding people and addressing them. We're missing things, but we're also throwing a lot of chemicals into a complicated system that interact with each other. We don't even sometimes know the extent to which we're throwing things out of balance and
Right.
the unintended consequences. And so there's this article that I mentioned this morning that was published in 2015 in The Lancet that made the claim, based on their analysis of the data, that perhaps engagement with the Western medical system in America is the third leading cause of death. And there's been a lot of conversation about statistical analysis and the way in which that study was done. But if it's not the third, it's somewhere around the fifth or the sixth. And it's because of medication side effects, medication error in administration of things in the hospital. Everyone is moving so quickly. And it's very hard to do your due diligence when you're moving that quickly.
Well, you preempted my question because I was very intrigued by that statistic in your presentation this morning. That seems an astonishing idea.
Yeah.
But enough about the problem. What are you seeing as potential pathways to solutions? How do we get out of this mess?
Well, I'm here today at this conference in exploring the relationship between the natural world and healing. And for me, shining the light on all of the ways that we can support ourselves to be in harmony with ourselves as well as the natural world is a very important aspect of not our own healing, but the healing that is more broadly speaking needed, both for our communities as well as our ecosystems and our relationship with the natural world.
So we're here at this conference to talk about this very idea of reciprocal healing. That implies, we've been talking about the need to heal people and how to best do that. There's also this need to heal the earth. But the word reciprocal implies that really you can't do one without the other. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
Absolutely. So for me, this notion of reciprocity, this give and this take, it's essential in us restoring our relationship with the earth and living our lives in a way that both bring us back into balance, which will be inherently healing for us, but also enriches our way of living, and remembering our responsibility to the earth. And so what this can look like, I direct a nonprofit that's lives in the Commonweal garden, and it's called the Natura Institute for Ecology and Medicine. And within this garden, we're working with this notion of reciprocity, of healing, and of being in connection with the earth. We have programs that are both exploring the way of being in relationship with the natural world so that we can reflect on our own behaviors and choices and the way we're living our life, both for our healing, but also we can look at our patterns of consumption. Like, what is it about consumerism that is so alluring, and why are we vulnerable to that, and how can we awaken to that, not just so that we can balance ourselves and be living in a healthy, optimal way, but also so that we can be seeing that our choices really impact the earth. But also, how do we grow food? How do we build soil? How do we participate in regenerative practices that are sustainable? How do we, build a compost pile? What is it that we can grow? How do we support our own family's resilience and our community resilience by knowing how to relocalize systems so that we're not so vulnerable to these big systems that are preying upon us, frankly, and making lots of money, and they're not going to go away anytime soon, but we're vulnerable the longer that we're held sway by these forces that are depleting the earth and depleting of our health. And so looking at systems, looking at the parallels between ecological consciousness and healing, looking at what it is to be skilled around growing food, and there are permacultural skills, that how do we capture water, how do we work with being on the earth in a way that's responsible and that is constantly giving back. And it can start with something as simple as being grateful for the fact that we have this gift of life, and that there's the miracle of soil and the miracle of rain and fruit and vegetable and all of these miraculous realities that we can actually engage with and be giving back and be actually beneficial force on this planet, instead of just endlessly taking and taking and taking.
Right. All of which sounds great, and all of which provides benefit of its own. But let's bring it back to the idea of medical outcomes.
Yeah.
Tie those two things together for me. How does the philosophy of resilient living that you just so beautifully laid out impact what you also say is a broken medical system? How does that cross the fence and make a difference in human health?
So one of the things that we know to be particularly challenging for human health, on par with cigarette smoking, which we all know is really bad for us, is isolation, the experience of loneliness. And so when we're back in connection with other people in a natural setting and in connection with the earth, right there is the emotional support just by being around other people and getting out of our isolation. So that's one way. There are ways that we can explore different models of delivering medical care that happen in groups, they don't have to happen in the clinic. We have a yurt in our garden where in collaboration with the community health center at which I practice, we do regular groups where we're engaging in the inquiry around how do I support my cardiovascular system, or my GI system, or my mind in the yurt, which is circular, which is so lovely to bring people together in a circle. And starting with like, who am I, where am I, what's my relationship to this topic, what am I holding right now? So we're weaving people together, and then having this integrative and ecological conversation about our body and what it takes to be in balance, and then having the integration moment of how is that true for me, what's resonant, and what sort of goals might I want to support, and how does the natural world support me in that? How can I engage with my community, my local system, my going to the farmer's market, growing food, and layering in those different skills into the exploration of what it takes for this body to be healthier.
But that's a whole lot more work than going to your physician and coming out with a prescription. Do you find people are willing to invest in their own health in this way?
I do. It's a heck of a lot more fun too. And people, honestly, people are not having a good time at the doctor's office. I mean, who goes to the doctor's office for a good time? But often people are coming away feeling disrespected, unmet, perhaps dismissed, perhaps their own intuitions invalidated or discredited, or at the very least not given the space to engage in the conversation in as deep a way. I mean, sometimes people just have a sore throat and they want to come in and have something, find out if they've got strep throat or not. But more often, at least in my practice, in my community, and I feel very privileged and I'm delighted to be serving a community that really wants to engage and wants to know how to not be prey to the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, as they might say. They might put it that way. So they want to engage in this way. And I think that there is an awakening that's happening slowly, and like all change, it happens in little pockets, and there's emerging consciousness that actually what's happening right now isn't working, and it's not translating to better health and wellness. It's not a joyful experience. I actually didn't even feel heard and didn't get to ask my question because it was such I don't even actually know what just happened in that room. That's often what people tell me. And so yes, I find that people really do want to engage in this way.
Well, they want to feel better.
They want to feel better.
Right? That's what we want. We want to feel better. And the fact is we're not doing it the way we have been.
And it feels good to be out in the natural world. And in many ways, you can let the natural world do the heavy lifting. When you're in a space like a forest or a garden, or a space where a container is held by, often I like to hold the space in a really good way, but honestly, so much of the work is being done by the natural world, and so much of the healing potential is there too. Be it that you have your hands in the soil, and all of those like microbes are coming up against your microbes and supporting your microbiome, like the good energy of just being around, and like the parasympathetic nervous system that's activated when you're out in nature, breathing in all these phytoncides is what they're called, but these plant chemicals that the trees are breathing out along with the oxygen that we're breathing in. Like, it's a great mystery and incredible wondrousness that's happening in the natural world that impacts our physiology and helps us settle into a place where we can connect both with the natural world but with other human beings in a supportive way, which helps us make the changes that we all need to make in order to turn away from the outmoded consumerism, predatory sort of disaster that's unfolding out there, and turn back into a more natural, balanced way of engaging with health and with the natural world and with each other. And it feels really good, and to be present to that with gratitude for the abundance of what we have, and that we don't need to buy, all this stuff in order to have our needs met, to be well and in balance. That it actually has revolutionary import in a really gentle, beautiful sort of a way that we can be recreating. There's a lot of power in story, and there's been one dominant narrative going out there, and it's time. Like, so many people are now into co-creating a new narrative, and what does that look like? And there's a lot of emergent possibility right now.
Well, you've given me hope on one front, because sometimes you face a crisis and you have no idea what to do about it. You're suggesting, no, when it comes to human health, we really do know some things that can really make a difference. And they're simple, they're cheap, they're easy. They solve lots of problems, emotional, psychological, community.
Right.
I also am struck by the idea that when my grandmother used to kick us out of the house, she was scientifically and medically sound in doing
Absolutely. She was doing you a tremendous service.
Right.
My mom too.
Yeah.
It's formative to spend a childhood in the forest.
All right, so let's leave with this one simple idea, because some people hearing this may be new to these ideas. And sadly, they're immersed in a lifestyle that doesn't incorporate some of what you've talked about. Give us one place that anybody can start. Make a start right now. What can you do?
I would say to go outside and to take a seat on the earth. And if you live in an urban environment, go to a park and to sit under a tree and to rest your back against the tree and to let your gaze be drawn to the light and the shade and the colors, and to feel the earth solidly underneath you, and to imagine the root system under you, and to just relax into the embrace of a tree. And see what happens.
Good place to start.
It is.
What's going to happen is you're going to enjoy yourself for those few minutes.
Yep, and your sympathetic nervous system will quiet, your parasympathetic nervous system will go up, you'll be in a better place to decision make and problem solve, and creativity will be supported, and you will not be so vulnerable to stress eating or buying something you don't need, or lashing out at somebody in challenging relationships.
And you can really go the distance and take your shoes off.
Oh, yes, you could.
Anna, thanks so much for this time and this conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.